I'm Drew Breezy, and this is the Comm Center. Coming up, our summer series continues with our comprehensive coverage of Hannah Payne, the vigilante trial. We're going to finish up what the prosecutor calls a closing argument, and as she continues on, the inconsistencies grow deeper and the eye rolls have intensified. On the Comm Center.
I'm John. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I've been in this game for 9 long years. Joining us, as always, is Drew Breezy. Why don't we just get into the Hannah Payne case? Because I know we're all dying to finish this summer series. It's been exciting. It's been a thrill ride. You've changed my mind, Drew, and I can't wait for you to pull the rug out from under me and change it back. So let's do it.
You're right, because we could do an end around in this whole thing. I'm conflicted in this whole thing because there should never be teams when it comes to justice. You know, she's got the blindfold, she's holding the scales. They should be, so we should never be pro defense or pro prosecution. But you know, we do work hand in hand with the prosecutors. You can't get around that. They represent the people of the state of the state that you're in, or the United States itself. And as law enforcement officers, when I was a law enforcement officer, I went around enforcing the laws of that area, and I brought them cases. And, you know, if they felt that it was worthy of a conviction, or that society needs to correct this type of behavior, they'll bring the case forward and we'll bring it to trial. And there's a certain way that I'm expected to act, and there's a certain way they're expected to act on the behalf of the people. So we're just going to rewind just a little bit. She's at the point in her closing argument where she's explaining use of force in defense of self or others. Because if you'll remember, she's characterizing Hannah Payne as jumping out of her car, pulling her gun out, racking the slide, running up, and says specifically that each witness just saw her shoot right away.
And calling him a mother, which we know did not get said, because she has her phone open to 911 the entire time. We heard the entire interaction. At no point does she say, "Get out of the car, mother." And I made a point about this last episode, but I don't think I made it well. Her jumping out of the car and calling someone a mother completely changes her state of mind between where she's trying to stop this person and have them return to the scene, and then mother is more about her own emotions. It's more about anger and vengeance. And we know she didn't say those words. It wasn't recorded, Drew. But in this closing statement, this prosecutor saying that she said it. So we have lies everywhere.
You know, that's a great point, John, because that really does change her frame of mind. She's trying to paint the picture that she was crazed when she jumped out of the car, and she very sneakily said, "Get out the car, mother." And that's because that's what other witnesses said she said. Then later in her argument, she went on to say, you know, she pretended that she walked up and showed her phone and said, "I'm on the phone with 911 and everything was calm." Well, here's the deal. She said that. We know she said that because we heard it. And that's what she testified to also. She said she walked up and so what I'm saying is, you're characterizing her as being crazed, "Get out the car, mother," and all this other stuff. Even if she was crazed and said, "I got 911 on the phone," I still maintain to this day why anybody would in cold blood murder somebody while they had 911 on the line.
Yeah.
One, and there's going to be a poignant part of her argument that I want to discuss in a second here.
It takes malice murder right off the table, having 911 line open.
And then two, it's just her frame of mind is like, why would she show the guy the phone? Why would she, like, all of that is consistent. All of that matches up. And she's not even allowing the jury to let that. So maybe that's the defense attorney's job to do that. And I told you I was a little underwhelmed with
but I made this point as well. You say it's on the defense attorney. It's on an ethical prosecutor not to prosecute someone unethically. You can't go in there and say things that are not true. Like simply characterizing her as someone who's crazed with anger and saying, "Get out of the car, mother," when It's not in the transcript. And I'm pointing back as well that, she was muddling the difference between what was said, what was heard, and what's recorded in a transcript, which is not the same thing as a live conversation. But a prosecutor has a duty to the people to not railroad the people, that they shouldn't be going out there and on the basis of lies or mistruths or half-truths, prosecuting people. We should always start with reasonable doubt to begin with. We always forget this. We watch TV shows and we take it for granted. But I want to implore you guys, as you're watching this, you probably got mad like I did at Hannah Payne. Hannah Payne is innocent until proven guilty. That prosecution has a huge mountain that they have to climb over. The burden is on the state. They have to make the case. The defense doesn't have to make any case at all. And unfortunately, we approach things now, those of us who are ignorant about the criminal justice system, as though it's two teams contending in a football game. Who gets more points wins. No, there's already a winner at the start of the game, and only an upset can change the outcome of that game. And what I mean by that is that the defense wins at the start of the trial. That person's innocent until proven guilty. They're innocent. And only a rigorous prosecution that's based on the truth can change that. But we don't see it that way anymore. We see it as like a football game. Like I said, it's very frustrating to me that we don't grant Hannah the reasonable doubt or the benefit of a doubt that we would all want for ourselves in her position. Why can't any of us treat her the way we would want to be treated? How do you know you're not going to be in the situation tomorrow? So before you convict Hannah Payne in your heart, stop and think, how would I want to be treated?
The question is whether it was reasonable for her to believe it. Would a reasonable person believe it under the circumstances that you've heard in this case? Was it necessary? To be entitled to self-defense, the defendant must have needed to use this force to protect herself from an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury or a forcible felony. The problem here is that a person is not justified in using force in self-defense if she is the initial aggressor. The defendant was the initial aggressor and therefore is not entitled to self-defense.
Disagree with all this.
I disagree with it too. I guess it's all in your definition of initial aggressor. Like there's nothing unlawful about jumping out of your car and calling somebody a mother. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's no force used at that point. So actually, I don't understand how she's being labeled as the initial aggressor at this stage.
Yeah, if Kenneth Herring reached out with his arm and grabbed her, he's the initial aggressor, and he's not entitled to self-defense.
I've said that from second one. Like when she showed the phone, if that is true, when she showed the phone and he grabbed her arm, whether he was in his right mind or not, whether it was a very, sad diabetic reaction, that wasn't normal character for Kenneth Herring, irrespective of all that, that does not make her the initial aggressor. All she did was walk up to somebody. She's not, you can't just get beat up just for yelling at someone. And again, this is like pro-criminal defense. This is pro-criminal prosecution is what this is, in my opinion.
I agree.
So whatever Mr. Herring did, once the defendant.
All right. This is, I said this in the last episode. I want you to listen to it closely. First of all, she starts with whatever Mr. Herring did, which implies what? He did something.
Implies that he did something, but it also just is frustrating that that whatever he did, we can classify that as something, right? Now he did something. We don't say it. If she was honest, she would say it doesn't matter that Kenneth Herring grabbed her and pulled her into the vehicle. She said she's such a wordsmith. It doesn't matter that he did something. Completely glazed over the egregious act that he actually did do. Drew, go ahead.
Now, what she's about to tell you, and because we've already played it once, but we'll play it again for you. What she's about to tell you, I want you to listen to very closely, because just in any statement analysis class I've ever taken or taught, or segments thereof that I've taught, you have it's just like any story anywhere. You have a beginning, a meat, or the middle, and you have an ending. And when the beginning is this long, the meat is only like that thin, and the end is this long, there's an issue, right? Or vice versa.
Terrible sandwich, yeah, awful.
It's a horrible sandwich.
It's not bread. It's not balanced, yeah.
Right, it's definitely not balanced. So it tends to if you've poured a bunch of details into your buildup, your middle part is just like a very quick, and then your ending is like either even more details, there's an issue. You're hiding something.
Cornered him, aggressively approached his vehicle, and pulled out that firearm. Doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. So it came in the third one. Cornered him, aggressively approached the vehicle, and pulled out the firearm. She didn't do it in succession like she's painting it. She, as they're characterizing it, cornered him. She may have aggressively approached the vehicle even. We'll give you that. The firearm didn't come until she was attacked.
Yeah. And she has the right to self-defense because she's not the one that assaulted somebody.
Right. But it is more convenient to paint this picture of she cut him off, which is an aggressive move. She got out and aggressively approached him, which is an aggressive move, and she whipped out that gun, which is an aggressive move. And that's not exactly what happened. That's a mischaracterization.
He was within every right he had to do whatever he did to defend himself.
That's disgusting.
It is. It's just like, what do you mean he had every right to do? Because she walked up with her phone out and said, "I have 911 on the phone."
He was committing a crime right then. He didn't have
yes
exhaustive rights to do whatever he wanted to do.
And this is where, like, if we can rewind to fucking episode 1 or 2, where I was like, look, I know that people don't want to get involved in stuff like this, but she was literally told he was an impaired driver. At what point have we come to in society where we're like, just let the drunk driver go? Like, it's a lot easier on yourself and everybody. Bullshit. That's letting the criminal win. I do understand people that don't want to get involved. I also understand that people do want to get involved and don't want to see harm come to the rest of society. I get it. And this whole thing was very unfortunate that a physical confrontation took place. It escalated very quickly and a gun came out, and we can debate that all day long. But to characterize this as aggressive, she whipped a gun out and pointed it in his face, yelling "mother,"
and that he can do whatever he wants. That's
he can do whatever. He's got carte blanche.
That makes my stomach turn over.
And think back to the evidence. Like, did her shirt rip because she ripped it? Did her shirt ripped? Like remember, her shirt was torn to shreds. She's got scratches and marks all over her back and her. So she's not mentioning he could do whatever he did. She's just making a blanket statement. Like, it doesn't matter what the marks are on her body. She had no right to do what she did.
Well,
but that's not necessarily true.
The other thing is you have to remember what Kenneth Herring shouted. He said, "Please don't hurt me." No, he didn't say that. He said, "I got something for you, bitch." Yeah. Does that sound like a statement of self-defense?
And reached into his backseat.
Because there was only one person on May 7, 2019 that was entitled to defend themselves, and it wasn't the defendant. Once again, the defendant is not justified in threatening or using force if she provokes the threat or use of force against him or herself, intending to use that threat or force as an excuse to harm the other person, is committing a felony. False imprisonment is a felony.
It's a reach.
But you haven't proven false imprisonment. You're implying false imprisonment. So
I would say she'd have to convict her of false imprisonment before she could even say this, to be honest.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why those jury instructions and everything, where you can pick a crime and everybody's guilty or all crimes are guilty. That's why there's a huge flaw in this. And the false imprisonment, I don't, she what she's basically done is, and kudos to her for this, she's just told the jury, we already got a false imprisonment. There's no two ways about that. Like, Don't even deliberate on that. So now she's committing a felony. You know what I mean? And that's, I don't know if that's good lawyering or but that's not justice.
It's good lawyering in the fact that you're performing a snow job on someone. This is full of circular arguments and logical fallacies that most people fall for these days. People that whose most rigorous debates are in the comments section, where whoever mentions Hitler automatically wins and things like this.
Yes.
We're not using any critical thinking. And just this last bullet point on the screen here, where she says, if she's committing a felony, false imprisonment is a felony. If I'm a juror, I'm reading that as she committed a felony.
Yes.
And it's up to me to decide that.
To allow an armed aggressor who confronts an unarmed, non-threatening victim to claim self-defense when the victim struggles to disarm the aggressor.
So wait, he
did
try to disarm her now? Like, because what I'm saying, what she said over and over about poking the bear, doing all this other stuff. He was just docile. He did nothing. He could have done whatever he wanted to do. So now she's making an argument that he tried to disarm her. They claim that she just walked up and shot him. But now she's saying that the victim struggled to disarm her because he was unarmed, non-threatening himself, which is not what was testified to. It was not what came out in the police interview. And show me where the inconsistency is there, because she's got marks to prove it. She's also got a shirt that's torn to shreds to prove that.
And her pistol was in the holster when she walked up and talked to him. We know that.
Yes. Yes.
It's contrary to common sense and contrary to law.
It's not contrary to common sense, but here we go with the cropped picture again. It's got her with the gun. It's even got like the gun is perfectly placed with a primer spot on the door, and it looks like smoke coming out of the gun. It's ridiculous. This is just
I'm sure they went through it like the Zapruder film and found the most inflammatory frame and put it up there. And during an evidentiary process before a trial, when they say, hey, this is what we're going to present to the jury, there should be objections to this. You know, some of this should be reversible error, that the picture you're showing is unduly prejudicial. It's inflammatory. You know, we don't show some pictures to the jury of egregious crimes that have been committed because of the way it will make the jury feel. And this is one of those photos where it's not best evidence because it's been edited. You know, in federal rules of evidence, there's a tenet called best evidence where you provide the original. That's why they didn't bring in a replica shirt. They brought in her actual shirt. Best evidence is a photo that has not been edited or cropped or touched at all. And if they're cropping this photo, it is not best evidence, and it is right on its face. Unethical, Drew.
And if like in a perfect world, John, we wouldn't be using this photo. As you pointed out yesterday, we would either use video that's slowed, or you would show a series of photos so you could see what the guy on the inside of the car is doing.
Too much context, though. We would have too much of an understanding about who's aggressive, that it may be at least equal, that they might be both aggressors, and then
it might even support the claim that he had both of his hands on the steering wheel, or he had his hands up, or he was in a defensive posture, or it's just it's very suspicious to me that the defendant is somehow blocking everything about that guy, and her gun is out. And that's the only photo they could come up with. This is like the Dateline episode, you know, that's the best photo you had of me. I don't even fish, and I'm wearing a fishing hat.
Mm-hmm.
On May 7, 2019, you heard testimony from Terry Robinson. There was an initial accident that occurred on Park Howell. You heard testimony that accident did not involve this defendant. She had made no contact with the defendant. There was no argument with her and the defendant. Her vehicle was not struck.
Everything she just said also applies to Terry Robinson. And she is making him out to be the saint of all saints for stopping for this crash. Everything she just said, and I'm going to play it again for you, but everything she just said about Hannah Payne in a very nasty and negative way to paint her as something she's not to that jury applies to the exact same witness she's talking about.
Just as a reminder, Terry Robinson was what the defense called a state officer. He was a correctional officer. He arrived on scene. He was one of the original people who dialed 911. He was a great witness. He's the one that told Hannah Payne that the subject was inebriated. He's the one that told 911 that he wasn't responding to commands to turn off the vehicle. And he's also the one that suggested to Hannah Payne that she go follow him or pursue him or get in file behind him, however you want to characterize that, to get the license plate.
Because there's some debate over that, but also, so we're clear, Terry Robinson, Department of Corrections, has no obligation to stop for any crash, but he did. If you're saying he has an obligation to stop for the crash because he's post-certified and he's got a badge on and he's supposed to check on people, then he was directing her to do stuff as a state agent. So you can't have it both ways. Either he was doing exactly what Hannah Payne did, or he was directing Hannah Payne on behalf of the state. You can't have it both ways.
We know that she loves to have it both ways. Like, look, explain the list of charges about how she can have both premeditation and recklessness, Drew.
She had made no contact with the defendant. There was no argument with her and the defendant. Her vehicle was not struck. That accident had nothing to do with her.
So Terry Robinson testified to the fact that, like, she's got hair, she's got eyes, and she's got a heartbeat, and she's standing here today. Therefore, she's guilty. Because Terry Robinson has eyes, hair, and heartbeat, and he's standing there today. It's like a ludicrous argument to say that somebody testified to the fact that she had no business when they had no business. If that's her argument, that Hannah Payne had no business even being part of that, then their star witness had no business being part of that.
Should be a self-defeating argument, but no one's realizing that.
She didn't get close enough, she stated, to smell any alcohol or the odor of alcohol in his breath.
Terry Robinson did.
She just interjected herself in a situation that had nothing to do with her.
Terry Robinson got close enough to smell the alcohol and specifically walked over to Hannah Payne and the truck driver and said, he's inebriated. And they looked at each other and said, do you mean drunk?
Yeah. He had to explain it.
What I should have believed is that when Terry Robinson was speaking in the background and he said, go, 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 that meant for her to jump in her car, chase down Mr. Herring, block his car off, apprehend him, and detain him.
That's not what she said at all. That isn't what she said at all.
And we know that's simply not true. Because what you hear on the 911 call with Mr. Robinson, the only thing he says, and the only thing he said was, take a picture of the tag. Now, if we are to believe that take a picture of the tag means this.
Again, we're conflating two things here. There's the car accident that was the pretext for everything that happened. Okay. We can argue about that until we're blue in the face. So Drew and I have done it, episodes 2 through 9. But what happened was that Hannah Payne had reason, good or bad or otherwise, to be in front of Kenneth Herring. And then a whole separate chain of events happened. Yes, the car accident occurred. Okay. But then Kenneth Herring reached out of his vehicle and grabbed onto her arm. At that point, we're not talking about a car accident anymore and whether or not pursuing someone to get a picture of a license plate. None of that matters. It's all irrelevant. I would be objecting to every bit of this, every bit of the way, because what it comes down to is Hannah Payne was in front of Kenneth Herring. He reached out, grabbed her, and said, I got something for you, bitch. And now the rules are all different. Drew, go ahead.
But even to get to that point, Mr. Robinson's hand gesture or his direction is irrelevant. His hand gesture probably isn't irrelevant because he was probably saying, get the tag, get the tag, get the tag. And she's saying that's what 911 picked up. She's not talking about also, though, that Hannah was talking to 911 while you could hear that in the background. Hannah's listening to 911 and interacting with 911, not with Kenneth or not with Robinson, not Kenneth, but not with Mr. Robinson. She's talking to 911. And he's by the way yelling, "Get the tag, get the tag, get the tag." He's got a whatever look on his face. You could hear the hurried sound in his voice, and we're going to hear it in a second, John. Don't you worry about that. But he is hurriedly telling her, "Get the tag, get the tag, get the tag." And he has identified himself as an agent of the state, as a state officer. He's had a badge on. He's told her that he is that the driver is inebriated. And this is what it distills down to. Is this? This is a travesty. This is not. I'm telling you.
That's what it distills down to. Go ahead.
And you also heard from Terry Robinson that the defendant was already in her vehicle. She was
right. That supports everything I just said. She was already in her vehicle. He was telling her, "Go, go, go," or whatever he was saying. It didn't matter what he was saying. It mattered what he was doing, the look on his face, what you could hear over 911. Because I think he was on 911 when she was driving by him. She knew what he was doing. He knew what she was doing, rather.
Already in motion. She was already prepared to do what she felt she was supposed to do in this situation. And you hear the 911 call. And you hear the 911 operator tell her, once they realize she's chasing Mr. Henry, "Ma'am, we advise that you do not chase or follow." And she said she understood 100%. But yet she still continued. "We advise that you do not chase or follow. We advise that you do not chase or follow."
Well, hold on a second, John. Let's flash back for a second.
Let's go backward in time.
Okay, so he is going west, down Fort Parkway. Okay, so you couldn't get the same number? No, but I'm catching up to him right now. Okay, ma'am, we actually do not want you to chase him. We just want you to be safe. I understand. I understand 100%. I'm just going to get the tag number, nothing else.
"We advise that you do not chase or follow."
That
And you heard testimony.
prosecutor lied to that jury.
Mm-hmm.
She lied.
At the very best, you could say was that she mischaracterized what the dispatcher said. But this is what I'm talking about with unethical prosecution. Go ahead.
She said that the dispatcher told her, "Do not chase or follow." And that's not what was said. Mm-hmm. It's not what was said in subsequent conversation. It wasn't said anywhere. I don't even know if it was said in the transcript that she used to bamboozle everybody because she didn't want to play what the actual words were. But she just lied. The people of the state of Georgia were not only lied to, they were lied for to that jury, and it sent Hannah Payne to a guilty verdict.
From Ashley Jackson, that she was speeding down Forest Parkway so fast, weaving in and out of traffic.
In congested traffic, mind you, that couldn't move.
I mean, she is chasing Mr. Henry, almost causing accidents, almost.
So if her witness was credible, that said that the traffic was congested and that no cars were moving,
running other people
she
off
could not
the
have
road,
done that, yeah.
And you heard the defendant say,
okay, so she not only could not have done that, I got to move on just a second.
Almost running other people off the road.
She said that she was weaving in and out of traffic, almost running people off the road, almost causing accidents. But that's exactly what Kenneth Herring did.
Yeah, he actually already done it.
He did cause an accident, and she was preventing him from causing another one. I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's an absolute, snow job to say that Hannah's, acting dangerously. Hannah's not intoxicated. Herring was at least intoxicated or impaired or otherwise because he had already run a red light. It wasn't even like it was like an illegal lane change or failure to merge properly or one of these like more common traffic accidents. You're just really not doing a good job driving at all when you run a red light and you hit a semi, which of course, how can you miss that?
Right. And remember the semi rocked.
But his clear and present danger is indisputable. Hers is all speculation. She was weaving in around in congested traffic that imprisoned a man. but we're not going to just mention that his actual acts that he's already committed. He could have killed someone easily if he hadn't struck the side of a semi. What if he had struck a school bus or a small car full of kids? He could have killed them. He could have been fleeing the scene of a fatality.
Or how about this? Hannah is could have caused an accident, could have put people in danger. Simply put, this guy already did all that.
Herring was already doing it.
He did that once, and he could have done the exact same thing again.
And I mentioned this.
And you heard the defense.
But the defense really should have put the dead man on trial. I hate to say that because we don't want our criminal justice system to be this way. But if the prosecution is going to use tactics like this, these scurrilous lies and mischaracterizations and completely glossing over what is true, you might as well go on the offensive and say, well, Kenneth Herring had already done this, and our defendant was simply trying to stop it from happening again because the police were nowhere to be found, despite a 20-minute-old 911 call. Drew, go ahead.
And when I finally caught up to him, I had an opportunity. Because in her mind, she was going to stop that vehicle by any means necessary.
She can't say that. She doesn't know that.
Right.
How can you just say that she was going to do this by any means necessary? If we want to talk audacity, like we did last episode, the audacity to sit here and there's someone in the room and you're going to speak for them?
Hey, it's Drew here from the Comm Center. While I was editing the final episode in Triggered Justice, the case of Hannah Payne, I ran across this clip that we discussed way back when we did the show. And I was kind of concerned that the phrase by any means necessary was used in the closing arguments because I feel that that's a little inflammatory. I don't think that I explained well enough why I feel that that's a little inflammatory. So I've prepared a little tutorial for you. So we're going to go through it real quick. So we'll start with a clean Google search, and I typed in by any means necessary. And as you can see here, there's several applications for it. The third thing down is attributed to Malcolm X, but everything else is like a tattoo or a quote or a book or a shirt. Synonyms. So obviously it's a widely popular phrase. But in the effort to keep it in context, I'm just going to hit the first thing that comes up. And you'll see that it attributes the Malcolm X quote. You can even see the AI overview, which is, powered by Google. It's Gemini, and it specifically talks about how it attributes this quote to Malcolm X. And essentially, when you drill down, it talks about civil rights. And in fact, the definition says, quote, by any means necessary, end quote, is an idiom meaning to achieve a goal no matter the cost, and was famously used by Malcolm X to advocate for self-defense and the pursuit of freedom and equality. In fact, when you drill down here, the meaning is the phrase, quote, by any means necessary, end quote, implies a willingness to use any available tactic, strategy, or method, including those considered unethical or immoral, to achieve a desired outcome. It is associated with Black civil rights, the civil rights movement, and this is the significance of using this in a closing argument when it's a civil rights-driven trial. So even when you drill down a little bit further, by any means necessary, the Wikipedia part of the main page here talks about it, attributes it to Malcolm X. It shows resources such as a Washington Post article or this NPR, subsidized by the U.S. government, American Experience is one of their shows. And the article here talks literally about any means necessary. It's the title of the article, and it's about Malcolm X. So even going back to a clean browser, I just searched Wikipedia : by any means necessary because I was curious to see what would come up if Malcolm X was buried in there, if it was just slightly attributed, and you could see very clearly the picture that's associated with by any means necessary is a picture of Malcolm X looking out a window with a high-powered rifle in his hand. But the bottom says in English, it is attributed directly to Malcolm X. So you can see right on the page, there's several quotes. But the thing that I found most interesting was Nelson Mandela in the final scene of Malcolm X, the Spike Lee movie. Nelson Mandela had been in prison for 27 years, and he appears as a school teacher in a Soweto classroom, right? And he's supposed to, in the script, be reciting Malcolm X's speech, but Mandela himself informed Spike Lee that he didn't want to utter the famous final phrase, quote, by any means necessary, end quote, on camera, because he felt that the apartheid government would use it against him if he did, and he more than likely feared being in prison again. So Lee honored his wishes, and the final seconds of the film feature a black and white footage of Malcolm X himself delivering the phrase, by any means necessary. So that kind of lends to the impact of this. It's used in common film, it's used in the vernacular, and it just essentially means by any means necessary does not involve ethics. It involves you cheating to win, essentially, to make sure that black civil rights are put on an equal scale. So finally, when you click on that picture, it shows Malcolm X with a high-powered rifle, and it says, by any means necessary, right underneath. Liberate our minds. By any means necessary is what it says. Is there any famous quote, by any means necessary? I'm just wondering.
Malcolm X, yes.
And she did. You also heard testimony of the rage she had, how angry she was, how aggressive she was.
We never heard that.
But when she stood on the stand, when she got on the stand yesterday, everything was so calm.
We heard the 911.
You can characterize it as rage if you want, because you're a liar anyway. How about adrenaline? How about adrenaline of a 22-year-old girl who not only witnessed an accident, now is her heart's thumping because she's trying to catch up to this guy to get shot and prevent from drunk driving accident.
There's no rage, though, Drew. There's incredulity. Like at one point when she says, like the gun went off and the dispatcher says, we told you not to chase him. She says, but he hit my car. That's incredulity, because she doesn't understand why the dispatcher is chastising her. Not only that, but we're supposed to believe rage. We never heard her call her mother. But we also had Hannah Payne being the first person to ask for aid for Kenneth Herring. If she hates him so much for what he's done, and she's consumed with rage, she's blinded with rage, which, by the way, would preclude premeditation and knock malice murder out of the ballpark. Why did she ask for paramedics? Why did she ask for a police officer to come assist at the scene right away?
You're giving the spoiler alerts now. I mean,
sorry.
And when her attorney is asking her questions, she has every answer detailed, laid out.
Oh yeah.
Right.
She's just gone up there as a buffoon. That's what an innocent person would have done, right? They would have been a buffoon. Yeah, they haven't answered everything because they were there and they can explain themselves.
She's saying that when her defense attorney was asking her questions, she had every answer. When I got up there with my attitude and started accusing her of stuff she wasn't doing, and I was getting everything wrong anyway, you heard how she changed her attitude.
Yeah, but
that's essentially what she's saying.
But this prosecutor is misleading them again. Examination and cross-examination is always different. Cross-examination is always more hostile. That's why, if you've ever seen it on a TV show, a cross-examiner could say, like, I want permission to treat him as hostile, because then they can have a little bit more leverage, be a little bit more aggressive in questioning to someone who's not answering. But examination and cross-examination are always going to be different. Why? Because there's an adversarial process going on. Of course, she's not going to treat you. And by the way, you're being a total jerk. And I wanted to use a harsher word, and I won't, because I don't want to be accused of misogyny. But you're not being kind to her. You're not even being professional. Why would she give you that deference of speaking with you like she did her own attorney? And as you mentioned, Drew, I'm sure that they rehearsed several times what they wanted to say. So it's just normal. But this prosecutor is trying to frame as what happened in this courtroom, this normal thing that happened, as somehow evidence of her guilt.
Attorney is asking her questions. She has every answer detailed, laid out, how she was just a people person. She was just trying to do things to help. She wanted to help all the other drivers on the road. And when I was asking her questions, she became very combative and aggressive.
That's incorrect anyway.
Oh,
She
well,
didn't-
under her definition of aggressive, it's very correct. But unfortunately, her definition of aggression is bullshit. So,
And it was always my perspective, what I thought. No, the 911 officer, dispatcher did not tell me to.
whose perspective should she be
Not-
testifying about when she's on the stand? Why should she testify on the behalf of someone else?
Follow, not chase. Because she knows best.
She knows best
That's
because she was
infuriating.
there. She knows best because she was
You know
there.
what shocks me is that actually Tasha Mosley would put this prosecutor in front of him, because this woman's not likable at all. And unfortunately, that does actually, it does matter exactly what the jury's opinion of you is, whether or not you're likable as that's happening.
And at the end of that 911 call, after she shot Mr. Herring, her whole attitude, I'm safe, but he ain't.
That's the what she's skipping over. If you'll give me a second, John. What she's skipping over is that she was on the phone with 911 when he was shot. She keeps saying when she shot him. That's not proven. When he was shot, she was already on the phone with 911. She can't hang up the phone and call 911 again to get him more help. It doesn't work that way. And when she says her attitude, because she said, I'm okay, he ain't, it doesn't matter what she says in the heat of the moment. She asked for help for the guy. She specifically told them he pulled the trigger on my gun. And it's like, well, you can't believe her because she had rage. That's
well,
not true.
The timing of the rage is also too. Well, she's trying to imply that Hannah Payne was mad for what reason, I don't know, because she wasn't initially involved in the car accident. She was just a witness. She went after, and then so this encounter happens where her vehicle is struck from behind. Well, there's this reverse pit maneuver or stopping maneuver or whatever you would want to. I wouldn't call it a pit, but just to stop the vehicle or whatever. So is she mad when she gets out of the car, or is Hannah only upset after she actually gets manhandled? I think any emotional reaction she has after Kenneth Herring puts hands on her and drags her into the vehicle, she's allowed to be upset at that point. Absolutely.
Yes.
But she wants you to believe that she was concerned and she wanted an ambulance and she wanted to assist and she wanted to help him make sure he was okay. She didn't care about Mr. Herring. We presented several.
Hold on a second. It's time for another flashback. So she's saying she wants you to believe that she asked for an ambulance. I'm going to play one call, John, and I think you have another one ready to go.
I just have.
He just pulled the trigger of my gun in my hand while he was. Ma'am, you were not supposed to follow him. He hit my car. Okay, you got the tag number. There's a police officer down the street. Tell him to come up here now.
Okay. She's being forceful. She's been in a tough situation. She's using language that I hate when people tell me now. You do this now. What she's doing is summoning help.
It is, and her emotions are very high, and it's a 911 dispatcher, and I've been caught up in this before, so I don't mean to be hypocritical because I've been annoyed by this, but the emotions frantic like that. They're trying to communicate a desperate need for help, and you have to see through the emotions of being bossed around. Essentially, get somebody here now.
Literal seconds.
It's because of how helpless they feel.
And literal seconds after the shot went off. She's like, there is a police officer up there. Get him here now. She's trying to characterize her that she didn't want an ambulance and she didn't want to help. John, play your 911 call.
County 911, what's the location of your... He just pulled the trigger of my gun in my hand while he was... Ma'am, you were not supposed to follow him. He hit my car! Okay, you got the tag number. There's a police officer down the street.
This is what we just heard.
Tell them to come up here now. He pulled the trigger on my gun after he attacked me. Tell the police officers to turn around from the 285 entrance and come up here immediately.
Here's the rest of it where she asks for the paramedic.
And now he needs paramedics.
Okay.
I'm safe, but he ain't.
I'm safe, but he ain't. And that's what she's characterizing his attitude. Here's what I want. Here's what I want you to hear what the prosecutor said.
I'm safe, but he ain't.
Very different.
But she wants you to believe that she was concerned and she wanted an ambulance and she wanted to assist and she wanted to help and make sure he was okay.
She asked for a police officer
and paramedics.
Paramedics.
She didn't say send some meat wagon. I just cooked a fool. You know, like that's not what she said at all.
We're talking about 6 or 7 seconds into her shooting, into the gun going off. 6 or second, okay, maybe 10 to 15 seconds later. Not a minute later, not 3 minutes later, not her doing a celebratory touchdown dance. None of that. This is
adrenaline, by the way.
Yes, a complete mischaracterization of what happened.
She didn't care about Mr. Herring.
She didn't care about him. Well, she probably didn't care about the guy that attacked her. I agree.
No.
Ma'am! Yes, ma'am! Please officer, turn around.
And I do, and you know, I get the 911 dispatchers like, ma'am, you weren't supposed to. The 911 dispatchers like, ma'am, you weren't supposed to follow him. She's in the middle of she's being scolded after this traumatic incident. She's being scolded. So
come up here immediately.
The defendant had multiple opportunities to do something else. To go back to the incident location. To go back home. Not pursue. This had nothing to do with her.
Did as soon as she got assaulted.
And the idea that she could command somebody to do anything. The only person that introduced a deadly weapon in this situation was the defendant. And but for her introducing that firearm, Mr. Herring would still be here today. You can't poke a bear.
Oh.
And then when the bear turns around and attack you, want to claim.
I thought that he was completely harmless and docile, and he did nothing.
A bear is quite dangerous, actually. A bear, particularly one that's drunk and behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, you can't poke a bear, and then when the bear turns around and attacks you, claim self-defense.
Self-defense. It doesn't work that way.
Yes, it does. She didn't poke the bear, first of all. But
well, not only, yeah, she didn't poke the bear. She talked to the bear. The bear grabbed her.
The bear, right? But the whole notion that she was not allowed to talk to this guy is ridiculous. It's ludicrous. He's a criminal.
Audacity to command somebody. Are none of us allowed to talk to each other to tell each other what to do at any point?
He committed at least one criminal offense that we know of, whether it was diabetic related or not. He left the scene of an accident involving property damage. Boom. He was thought to be intoxicated. They had already notified authorities to get your butt over here, and the authorities had not gotten their butts over there yet because they were busy doing whatever. And then this guy takes off. And then she's characterizing it, this following as poking a bear. It's pro-criminal. She is like so pro-criminal at this point. And I cannot believe that the people of the state of Georgia need to be represented this way.
She should have minded her own business.
Like every witness you put on the stand?
Now, this is the real reason we're here today.
Ugh.
Now, the law doesn't allow us to talk about Mr. Herring's background and history.
Oh.
And go into details about that.
Notice her voice is very calm now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not allowed to talk about how bad he was.
But there is no reason, absolutely no reason Mr. Herring shouldn't still be alive today. preparing to spend the holidays with his family and friends.
Oh, please.
There's absolutely no reason.
I could think of a reason, Drew.
I see.
Here's my artistic impression of the Kenneth Herring we don't get to see. Now, this is just my artistic impression, but if you look at his face, this is my thumbnail I made for the previous episode. On his face, he looks like, I got something for you, bitch. And his left hand is reaching out to grab somebody. So this is at least partially based on testimony. And the picture that we get of Mr. Kenneth Herring, for some reason, is not this picture. You know, it's too bad.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little license here. And if you'll notice the defense attorney squirming in his chair because he turned around and looked over his right shoulder and didn't see who he was looking for. Then he turned around and looked over his left shoulder to look at Hannah's family because, and this is a total guess. I could be making this up 1000% entirely. But the look he's giving is, are you hearing this shit about his family and his friends? Because his family and his friends know that he was capable of doing what he did.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what I'm taking away from this. And again, I don't know that to be factual. I'm not asserting that.
I'm ready to believe it because let's just take all we have is our faint impressions of this guy. So let's take what faint impressions we have and just extrapolate. We don't have to extrapolate very far. Could be a diabetic thing. We have to throw that out there. It's possible that he's impaired for some reason. It also is possible because, you know, a corrections officer believed he was inebriated, and a correctional officer deals with inebriated people coming to jail all the time. He's got some professional experience. It's possible that he was drinking. It's possible he was drinking and driving. It's possible that he was involved in a traffic scene and that he wasn't cooperative with people telling him that he should, you know, turn off his vehicle. He also left the scene, which is a crime. He also reached out, grabbed a woman, called her a bitch, and said, I got something for you. And who knows what he was reaching for. So I just wanted to say that as a person that would never do any of these things, personally, he's not as much of a man as I am. And even I am not so great.
Thank you. Hold on. We're almost done here.
And but for the defendant's actions on May 7, 2019, he would be. You saw and heard the evidence. And all of the evidence points to one conclusion, that the defendant is guilty. But this isn't a complex case.
Okay, so this is...
Okay, I've got something, but you go ahead first.
Yeah, this is how she wanted to leave it in the jury's mind. Written in yellow.
You saw and heard the evidence. And all of the evidence points to one conclusion.
That's priming. I mean, it's legal. I'm sure that the defense does the exact same thing, but she's saying the defendant is guilty, like as in she's burning this into their brains. It's a different color on the slide at a minimum.
That the defendant is guilty. But this isn't a complex case.
This isn't a complex case.
I got this, Drew. I got something to say here, if you don't mind.
The defendant had no right.
We have like 10 seconds left. Okay, go ahead.
I've got to get it in, Drew, or I'm going to die. You know me.
Okay. Yeah.
This appeal to simplicity is an appeal to lazy thinking. They're saying you don't have to consider this very much. You don't have to search your hearts and your minds for what is true. The fact is that every serious matter facing us as people and as a society is complex, whether it's how to fix our presidential elections or how to fix our judiciary or how to conduct yourself as a nice human being or whatever. These are all complex questions, and everyone wants you to believe that everything's simple. They want you to be a cognitive miser. It's a false dilemma between A and B, and by having her say that this is not a complex case, she's inviting them not to be critical thinkers about it. She's saying all you have to do is just like, what's your gut feeling? What do you feel at the surface, rather than thinking deeply about it. It's disgusting, Drew, and her tactics are obvious to me. Let's finish it. I'll shut up.
To do what she did. None And so I'm going to ask that as you deliberate, that you find her guilty on each and every count in the indictment.
All you, buddy.
Again, it's just, you know, the audacity that she conducts herself with is truly troubling. I wanted to throw up a graphic here to explain my point about simple versus complex thinking. Look at this. Simple but wrong. Look at how many people take that path. And complex but right. There's very few people on that long winding road. She's standing at that T intersection and she's saying, everybody, take this simple way. And it's what everyone does because nobody wants to think. And she knows that if she can get a large number of people in that jury to not think about this complex problem about who was right and who was wrong and how this is really two incidents and who is the aggressor and not the aggressor and who is in prison and not. If you don't spend any time thinking about it and you just fall for all this theater and all this attitude, you're going to take the road, the easy road, the straightforward route of simple but wrong. And that's exactly what happened in this case.
Exactly what happened. And
let's talk about Hannah Payne too. I want to talk about what happened to her. She's now 25. She was found guilty in the death of 62-year-old Kenneth Herring in Clayton County. She's going to spend the rest of her life behind bars with a chance of parole. The jury convicted her of felony murder, which was murder while committing a felony. What felony? I don't know, because apparently, the jury made up in her mind that she had already committed false imprisonment, which she hadn't been convicted of. Malice murder, which she had a 911 phone call open during her premeditated act of murder. Aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and 3 charges of weapons possessions during a crime. Her testimony on the stand, despite that, it took the jury only 2 hours to reach a verdict, which, if you ask me, Drew, is also a crime. Because do you reach a complex verdict in 2 hours or do you reach a simple one, like my little graphic showed?
No, it's a simple, she's imploring them to take the simple path.
Found her guilty on all counts. Judge Scott sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole plus 8 and 5 years to be served consecutively, not concurrently, but consecutively, meaning she does 8 more and then she does 5 more after that. Judge Jewel C. Scott heard from the Herring's family who asked her to give Payne life in prison. This case got national attention, and Clayton County District Attorney Mosley says that they do not believe that the murder was race-related. And yet we saw this baiting the entire time, this coded language, this stuff about her being entitled to command someone to do anything. Mosley called the sentence a victory, and she says that even if Payne eventually gets parole, she will still have to serve at least 43 years. Quote, in our mind, when you look at 43 and you're 25, all the good years are gone, the Clayton County District Attorney said. Prosecutors are now investigating death threats against both families. That's because of the grandstanding that was going on here. If you make this case as inflammatory as possible, yeah, there's people that are going to want to go to bat for Hannah Payne, as I now do, and there's people that want to go to bat for Kenneth Herring because of the way this was described as a entitlement case or some sort of race relation case, which of course they now want to back away from. After the sentencing, Mosley told Fox 5 that they're investigating multiple death threats and that any death threats against any family will be investigated to the fullest extent of the law. But this is Hannah Payne, 25. You've reviewed this case. We went to it in depth. This is a young woman who, in her own words, has learned that sometimes doing the right thing is the wrong thing. She wanted to protect people. She got involved. She tried to get someone to return to the scene to be held accountable for the crimes that they committed, which are not in dispute. And now she's going away, all her good years, the rest of her life, thrown away, so that Kenneth Herring, a man of the people who calls people bitch and grabs women that he doesn't know, 62 years old, all to appease him and his family and his ilk, she's gone. And I hope that her appeals go well. I hope she can get another trial. But it's truly sad. And I think that you should feel for Hannah Payne, because you should put yourself in that situation and see how you would feel if this was all about you. That's what I would invite you to do, just to have some empathy for her. And even if you still can't agree that Hannah Payne was completely innocent, Ask yourself if what she was tried with, what she was convicted with, and what she was sentenced to is appropriate. Even if you wanted to get her on some degree of manslaughter, she shouldn't be doing 43 years in the best years of her life inside the walls. Ask yourself, based off of what you know of Hannah Payne, based off of her testimony, off of her appearance. I hate to say this, but just going by what she looks like, do you think she belongs in a Georgia prison? She doesn't belong there. There's no way that she does. You could say that she deserves some sort of consequences or accountability, but not this, Drew. This is a massive miscarriage of justice, and I leave it to you to take away.
You summed up exactly what I'm thinking. Like, look, I feel horrible for Kenneth Herring and for Kenneth Herring's family because he's dead. But listen, whether this was diabetic related, the bottom line is something took place, an attack took place. For some reason, the state is allowed to mash all of this into one big pile. 2 separate incidents took place. Okay. And they lied. The state lied to prove this other case where the false imprisonment took place. Therefore, there was a felony while she was committing a felony of false imprisonment. She killed this guy. But that's not what happened, according to her testimony. And what they're saying is, no, all these other witnesses need to be believed. Hannah Payne does not need to be believed. And Hannah took the stand in her own defense, and we've talked about that a few times in the past. It's rare that it happens. But she swore under oath that that what she was saying was the truth. And of course she gave the answers very smoothly to her defense attorneys because she knows what her defense attorneys are going to ask. She has no clue what the prosecutor is going to ask. And when the prosecutor asks a question and she makes a mistake and points it out, she's not giving her attitude. She's just not giving you the answer that you want to hear, which again is the lazy way out of this. So just the same as, people clamor for the Second Amendment and all this other stuff. Hannah Payne has a Fifth Amendment right to not take the stand.
Clamor for the Sixth Amendment of due process. Stand up for Big Six.
Yes. So I think this, I feel horrible for Kenneth Herring and his and the family because I don't know what happened there. I know that he ended up dead, whether it was a freak accident or not. What I do know pretty certainly is this was not a cold-blooded murder.
I have reasonable doubt, Drew. Do you?
I most definitely have reasonable doubt.
So she shouldn't be behind bars. It's as simple as that. Is that if her jury of peers consisted of you and me, she wouldn't be there.
I do believe that this was public pressure.
I have no doubt.
This is pure public pressure. I mean, I'm seeing petitions online, and let me just read this from petition.org or change.org. I'm sorry. Help us get justice for Kenneth Herring. It says why this petition matters. This petition is targeted towards gaining justice for the brutal murder of Kenneth Herring in Clayton, Georgia on May 7, 2019. Hannah Payne racially profiled.
Oh, my Lord.
Followed, beat, and killed Kenneth Herring in cold blood after he left the scene of a car accident. Hannah Payne accused Kenneth of being drunk, but his toxicology report proved that he had been sober. Kenneth Payne was in diabetic shock and on the way to the hospital when Hannah Payne followed him for a mile and blocked him with her Jeep before beating and shooting him. Hannah Payne called 911. The dispatcher, they called the 911 dispatcher and continued to follow after being told to leave him alone. Not only did she not comply with the authorities, but she took on the role of the police and pursued to murder him in cold blood.
Right. About the diabetic shock thing, if we can say for sure, if that's even accurate, that he wasn't intoxicated, which I'm willing to believe, he's still responsible for what's going on. You can't just say I'm diabetic and so however I'm behaving.
Yeah, every criminal in history could just say I'm diabetic.
Yeah, you're still responsible.
He's still responsible, and he still should have to answer to it. Like, he may never be punished for it, which is fine. Like, that's how the system's supposed to work. what happened here is the prosecutor turning full on pro criminal. He was committing crimes. I'm not saying that he was a lifelong criminal. I'm not saying he was a prolific offender. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that whatever happened in the events that led up to this was a crime, and Hannah Payne was given indicators that a crime was occurring when he drove away because she thought he was intoxicated. So she stopped him. So now a new stopwatch should start. A new incident should start at that point. This is not the continuation of the same incident. But the jury is led to believe that she was just pissed off and wanted to insert herself, and she was being a Karen. And she had no business being, jumping. The hell she didn't.
Well, imagine this case, and imagine all the foregoing, audience, Andrew. If you had never heard anything about a car accident or fleeing a scene, imagine you had never heard anything about that and you had no idea why this encounter took place. Imagine, if you will, a woman standing on the side of the road trying to talk to a man inside a red pickup truck. The man reaches out and grabs her and says, "I got something for you, bitch." And then she's pulled inside the car and she's fearing for her life. If that was the only situation, it would at least change the way that you thought about it a little bit.
Right.
And that's why the characterization of her as the aggressor is so important. And that's why we talked about the traffic stop so much. And that's why the prosecutor had to make it the way that the entire incident was framed. And you mentioned it last time too. All these people that witnessed against her, they had no idea that context. So
that's right. They came in at phase 2, and they claimed that they even thought that was an accident. They saw the damage on his car and her pulled in front of him, and that she was reacting to being in an accident.
They thought it was a road rage thing. Yeah.
Right. And we know from 911 call history and her being on the phone with 911 that that's just not what happened. So we started this whole thing by saying every word counts. Every word matters. She is allowed to take those words that the 911 operator said and apply them as she's allowed to do that. She can misunderstand anything. That's human nature. And when you're caught up in the moment, that's part of human nature too. This is not a life, send her to life in prison felony.
Do you have any thoughts on Judge Jewel Scott about this?
No, I don't really. I mean,
here's a picture of her, in case you wondered.
I think that there were some hopefully trial errors in this thing, just so Hannah gets another shot at this. I don't root for death. I don't root for any but I don't think this was a vigilante justice case. This is similar to like Daniel Penny in the New York subway. Like, the guy was acting erratic. Daniel Penny subdued him because that's what the people around him needed. And it just so happened that the guy died, excited delirium or faulty chokehold or whatever. Is he going to prison for the rest of his life? This is horseshit. And it's because people are too afraid to stand up because they don't want to appear racist. And they are too afraid when the public pressure of these organizations or change.org come forward and say, this was racially motivated. There's no evidence whatsoever to indicate that this was racially motivated. None.
There's no fair press at all. Every time she gets casually called a vigilante, which if you Google her, that you see that word all the time. That's just not even a fair characterization of it. If you take this path to figuring out her behavior, if you turn left, simple but wrong, you'll say, oh yeah, she's a vigilante. If you spend 9 episodes trying to figure out what the hell happened, you might figure out that maybe it was something else. And when a person's life, the rest of their life hangs in the balance, they deserve complex thinking. They deserve for someone to tell you this is a complex case and it's going to take your best effort to figure this out, because the stakes have never been higher for Hannah Payne. Not some sort of crooked prosecutor who's supposed to represent all people, including Hannah Payne, and only prosecute that case fairly. All right, this long series is now over. Take a deep cleansing breath. We have figured out Hannah Payne. Hopefully, we've invited some people to, if we can't change your mind, to at least think a little bit more deeply about it. If you've watched all of these installments of the Hannah Payne summer series, we appreciate you taking the time to think about it, to commit yourself to one case. Again, we talked about how these cases for 911 dispatchers, they don't just go away. Sometimes these things can go on and they can drag on for years, like they did for Hannah Payne, 3-4 years that these things can go on for. The implications of what goes on in a 911 dispatcher's calls, there can be huge. They can change somebody's life, as Hannah Payne's 911 call certainly changed hers. And that's one more aspect of being a 911 dispatcher that's important and misunderstood.